Okay? So that's where you start. Now you move into your first duel. The 3 questions you need to answer here today are, what is their world today? What market forces are changing that world, causing what problems? Why is change necessary? Okay? So the purpose of this duel now is to gain alignment on some basic truth before you bring up making a change of any kind. What this is going to do is create agreement up front, which means you've secured some emotional buy-in out of the gate. And when you gain that, your customer is going to be more likely to visualize towards the destination you've laid out as the pitch advances. It's also going to help put them in a position where they kind of feel like it's their presentation and not yours. Okay? Because they're like, I can get down with the way things work now. So you got to have some truth that they can agree to first about the industry, right? About the way things work today before you bring up the idea of change. I will say this, the single best way to create this agreement, and I would say every presentation that I develop for companies, this is the method we employ. The single best way to create that agreement is to figure out an analogous scenario and draw the parallel to how that relates to their industry or their business landscape. So you can be like, being like, you know how things work like this over here? It's actually the same thing that's happening here. Because once they agree to the analogy, drawing the line is so easy. Like once they agree to that case, drawing the line over is just, it makes so much sense. They're like, yeah. And then what you're able to do is teach them in the process. And they're like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that before, but that's really interesting. And so now they start thinking of you start thinking of your team as experts, as thought leaders, and they want to listen to more of what you have to say. Once you've done that, you advance to your second duel. The 3 questions here, and the duel here is all about conveying impact. The 3 questions are, what crossroads does change represent, or what does it present? What is the trade-off or loss in doing nothing and holding their current position? And then ultimately, what's the impact of making a change? So you get to this point, you end duel 1 by being like, so they're so people are making a change, or there's a reason to make a change. So, and change is necessary. Now you're like, okay, which road do you want to go down? You basically put an inflection point in front of them. It's like Neo in the Matrix. Do you want to take the red pill or do you want to take the blue pill? Obviously, you're building the case for the red pill, which is making a change. Okay. But you want to, I really encourage you to be like, tell your team, be bold with the question, take a stance, get them to say, oh, we want to explore this path further, because it's going to help your audience self-select themselves in or out, which creates more qualified buyers. And by asking them to pick their path, and I promise you 99.9% of the people will pick the path you choose for them, you're getting them to verbalize, yes, I want to keep going down this route, right? So you get another layer of buy-in. You get a micro agreement. I also want to point out here, we are not yet talking about your product or your service or your company. We are simply talking about the landscape, the idea of change, the idea of doing something. What happens if they don't do change of any kind, right? Because what that's going to do is lead you to your third and final duel, which, remember, is the inevitable ending. And so now you have so here's who we are, here's how we help. And so your 3 questions here are, what's your plan of attack? AKA, what is your product or service and how does it help? Reinforce the destination that you mentioned at the beginning and what that brings them. And what's your credibility? Okay. So credibility is going to